In the first part of King Lear, we have seen that the old King Lear has divided his kingdom and administration between the first two daughters, Goneril and Regan, and disinherited his third daughter, Cordelia, because she did not declare how much she loved the king. Now let us see what happens afterwards in the palace of Goneril and Regan when King Lear goes to their palace. Even before the completion of the first month, the old king began to experience the difference between the promises and the actual treatment. The king had 100 knights as his attendants. Unable to bear the sight of the old man accompanied by several servants, the first daughter Goneril tried to avoid speaking to the old man, King Lear, her father. She thought that the old king was a burden and the expenses on his attendants were unnecessary. She did not respect Lear as a king. Goneril said to her steward, every hour he bursts out in his violent fits of temper on one trivial offence or the other, setting the entire house noisy. I am no more prepared to bear this nuisance. Even her servants started treating Lear with neglect. Lear could see the difference between Goneril's declaration of love and the actual indifference shown towards him. The good Earl of Kent did not leave Britain because he thought that he might get a chance to be useful to the king. In the disguise of a servant, the Earl of Kent gained Lear's service, taking the name of Caius. Caius had occasions to display his love to the loyal king. When Goneril's steward behaved disrespectfully to Lear, Caius stripped up heels and put him in the kennel. After this incident, Lear became more attached to Caius. It was the custom of the kings to have court fools or jesters. The fool in the court continued to be with Lear even after he had given away his powers. The fool was keeping up the king in good humor by his witty remarks. The fool remarked, don't lend more than what you possess. Ride more than you walk. Don't believe all you hear unless you ascertain it. Sometimes he jeered at his master for his imprudence in giving away his crown and all his possessions to his daughters. The fool was honest, and even in the presence of Goneril he openly declared what he felt about the king. You are merely a cipher without its value-giving digit. I am much better than what you are now. I am at least a fool, where you are nothing, a non-entity. Once the fool compared the king to a hedge sparrow feeding the young ones till they grow old, and then being hit by them later. The fool also remarked that Lear was no longer Lear, but the shadow of Lear. Whenever the fool made free speeches, he was threatened to be whipped, but even when he continued his witty remarks, he is the only character who could make his comments on the king's behavior. Goneril continuously ill-treated Lear. She said that it was useless and expensive to maintain 100 knights with the king. She asked Lear to minimize the number of attendants and select a few people as his attendants. Lear could not believe his eyes or ears, but Goneril persisted in her demand. The old king was very much excited and called Goneril a detested kite. Goneril complained that Lear's attendants were behaving in an unrefined manner. But Lear knew well that all his attendants were men of good behavior and manners. Goneril was simply telling a lie. Lear blamed himself for taking a wrong decision. Oh, Lear, 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 with this brain which allowed you folly to come into and turned your precious judgment. Unable to stay in Goneril's house any longer, Lear decided to go to the second daughter, Regan. He wanted to take his 100 knights with him. He realized that Goneril was ungrateful and ingratitude is more dangerous than the sea monster. He severely cursed Goneril, saying that she might never have a child, and even if she had, she should face the same kind of ingratitude from a child when it was grown up. Perhaps she must realize that to have a thankless child is sharper than a serpent's tooth. Lear was not prepared to hear Duke of Albany's words of compromise. Then Lear went to the palace of Regan. The angry Lear, accompanied by his attendants, rode the horse towards the residence of Regan, the second daughter. Lear realized that even if Cordelia was faulty, her fault appeared to be very small when compared to that of her sister. The old king began to weep. He was ashamed to be the father of such a creature as Goneril, who made him weep. Regan and her husband were leading a pompous life in their palace. Lear sent word through Caius about his arrival so that Regan might be ready for a good reception. Goneril had also sent letters to Regan pointing out the follies of the old man and advising Regan not to receive the old man with a retinue of attendants. There was an encounter between Caius and the messenger from Goneril. Caius beat him severely as he was carrying a wicked message from Goneril. When Regan and her husband came to know of the fight between Caius and Goneril's messenger, they ordered Caius to be punished, putting him in the stocks. By punishing the king's servant, Regan had displayed her disrespect towards the king. The moment Lear entered Regan's palace, he saw Cassius sitting in a disgraceful situation. Lear did not expect such a kind of reception from his second daughter. The fool remarked, "Fathers that wear torn clothes do find their children not over anxious to take any notice of them, but fathers who keep their money bags full find their children keenly attending on them. Fortune never opens the door for the poor." Lear was told that he could not see Regan and her husband because they was tired of a travel and taking rest. Lear got angry. He insisted on seeing Regan. Then Regan and her husband came to greet the king. Lear was shocked to see Goneril also in their company. The old Lear was very much moved by the sight of Goneril taking the hand of Regan. Regan suggested that Lear should dismiss half of his attendants, ask for forgiveness from Goneril, and stay in Goneril's palace. She accused him of having lost the power of discretion. Lear could not imagine his position. Begging his own daughters for food and clothes, he refused to go with Goneril. Declaring his decision to stay with Regan along with his 100 knights, he said, at least Regan was not so fierce like Goneril. He would not return to Goneril, cutting off the number of his attendants. He would rather go to France and beg for assistance from the King of France. Strangely enough, Regan declared that 25 attendants would be more than sufficient for Lear. She asked him, "Why do you need even one attendant? This house is too small to accommodate the old man as well as his attendants." Confused and heartbroken, Lear then said that he would go with Goneril, since she allowed 50 attendants with him. On hearing this, Goneril replied that it was not necessary for Lear to have any personal attendant. Her servants would take care of him. Lear could not tolerate the ingratitude of his daughters who denied him the essential service of the attendants. The ill treatment and disrespect shown towards him by his two daughters pierced Lear's cot. Lear lost his mental balance. Let us continue the rest of the story in King Lear Part 3 in the upcoming video.